You are listening to the Enormocast.
When you think about it, is there another gear company so dedicated to outfitting climbers from head to toe as Black Diamond? They've got lightweight modern helmets and headlamps for your pointy head, high-performance apparel to wrap that sweet climber bod you've been cultivating, all the way down to their line of advanced climbing shoes for those tender piggies. They've got crash pads for the pad sniffers, the best protection money can buy for the trad dads, ice tools for the masochists. Pitons, haul bags, portal ledges, backpacks, draws, beaners, harnesses, tents, probes, skis, poles, and even the signature Enormocast rhinestone-studded unisex microfleece G-string. Well, no, that doesn't exist yet, despite me stuffing the suggestion box every chance I get. So next time you're shopping for, well, nearly anything a climber could want, honor the generations of weary Black Diamond engineers poring over AutoCAD in their cubicles when they'd much rather be climbing. And go to blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop to see the fruits of their dedicated labor. And remember, Black Diamond is a proud sponsor of the Enormocast. You know, there's too many ways that ice climbing is miserable. The screaming barfies, somehow being sweaty and freezing at the same time, and the Norwegian death metal your partner is cranking on the dark drive to the trailhead. But with help from Sportiva, your boot performance and the comfort of your precious piggies can be resolutely checked off the blood-scrawled manifesto of ice climbing horrors. From big routes to next-gen tech climbing, Sportiva has created a line of futuristic mountain boots with old-school reliability and durability, like the warm all-arounder, the Nepal Cube GTX. So let's face it, at some point in the day, you're going to moan with pain. But let's make sure it's not because of your feet. Swipe right to Sportiva.com or your nearest high-end climbing retailer to slip your hooves into a pair of these majestic boots. And remember, when you support Sportiva, you support the Enormocast.
Listen, where are you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
a
the big
house. We
place,
sold
that
it
side
out.
of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold it out.
20,000 seats.
We
really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by La Sportiva with support from Maxim Ropes and our friends at Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com, enter Enorma at checkout to get a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast. Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is January 24th, about 10 o'clock in the morning, and this is episode 191 of the Enormocast, a conversation with climber, author, train hopper, Dakota Walz. Urban climber as well. What is that? Well, remember the magazine? Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. But I want to talk a little business. I feel like I haven't come up for air on the Enormocast for a little while. The holidays kind of get in the way of doing this thing, not only for myself, but for getting interviews and stuff like that. And the other thing that you don't know until you have kids is that your parents actually got really sick of you over the holidays and couldn't wait for you to go back to school at the end of it. So, yeah, you kind of hit this high point around the 25th. Everything's fun, having good time with your kids, and then by the 31st, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whenever they go back to school, you've kind of run out of things to do. And you're just kind of waiting. Everybody's just waiting around for them to go back to school. So that's all behind us, and it's late January. Headed to the Ice Fest this weekend for one night. Get a couple interviews down there. So if you hear this before that, which is, I guess, tomorrow. Actually, the Ice Fest is going on right now, and I'm not there, but I'll be there tomorrow. Say hi if you see me running around. Another thing I want to mention is that, of course, the TAPS edition is out right now. It was the first one of the year, the annual TAPS things that should be dead or are dying or have long gone in climbing. And, of course, that always produces a lot of email for me, which, as you know from listening to the show, I love the email. And we have addressed some of those things we talked about in the TAPS edition further at the Facebook page. There's been lively discussions over there around lowering through anchors and simul-rappelling and a few other those little controversies that we dug up in there. Keeping in mind that, of course, most of that show is about comedy. And even though we may say outrageous things, we don't always mean them 100%. But, of course, as all satire and parody, there's some sort of kernels of meaning in there. I wouldn't say truth because, of course, it's all opinion. But anyhow, if you are interested in, giving your opinion, good place to do it is Facebook page. And I don't always get to all the email, so check it out. And like I said, there's just a big discussion, plus I furthered some of the details of my opinions about those things. So anyway, that's it for the TAPS edition for this year. So we'll just start saving stuff up for next year. Yeah, I don't see it ending anytime soon. It's just too much fun for us, and I think you guys dig it as well. Okay, the other thing to talk about is the listener mail episode. Where is the listener mail episode? It's happening. I got way more listener mail than I expected. The door is firmly closed on that for this episode, by the way. And sifting through them, getting my panel sorted out, and finding a time when we can get together and do that. So that will be coming up in February. And as far as the swag, I promised, well, what I had in mind, I don't have enough of. So let me get that sorted out too. It may take a little while, but you will get something, and it'll be better than a sticker, because stickers are always free anyway. So don't bug me about it until the episode's over and I've announced on here that the swag has been sent. Then, if you feel like you've been slighted, get in touch, okay? All right, let's get to this interview with Dakota Walz. Dakota grew up in, unironically, one of the Dakotas. Where's Fargo? Is that in the north one? I think it's in North Dakota, right? He also grew up in Kansas City, partially, and came of age as a climber down there, which is obviously a little bit difficult. And I know I have a lot of folks who listen from those parts of the country, but yeah, let's admit it, it's not a climbing mecca. He also dealt a lot with mental health over his youth and his coming up in climbing. And one of the fascinating things that he was really into is jumping on freight trains. And not just, jumping on them through town, but riding them all over the country and getting sort of into that weird, strange, kind of mythological community and kind of a sketchy community. Not kind of a sketchy community, a sketchy community. So that's an interesting part of his story. All of it kind of having to do with dealing with mental health and depression. And that all comes out in this podcast, which is, of course, very, very interesting, I think. And a way to go deeper than just talking about what Dakota has climbed, which we barely even scratch. So that's this kind of interview this time around. Dakota also has a book, a self-published little book, very small, I think around 100 pages, maybe less, called Everything I Loved More. And it's available at Amazon and also from him at dakotawalz.com. That's Walz, W-A-L-Z. And yeah, I'm sure he would love for you to buy it straight from his garage, where there's a box of them, or 2 or 3, as will happen when you self-publish. So nice little read, and a lot of cool stories about growing up in the Midwest and trying to become a climber and looking for adventure and dealing with some demons inside. So check it out. And always good to support a climber artist of any type, in my opinion. Let's get to this one with Dakota Walz. I hope you guys learned something and maybe feel some connection to a guy that doesn't talk about climbing with just, rainbows and unicorns. And of course, thanks for listening. I love you guys. I love you guys. We'll talk about climbing too somewhere.
Eventually.
Yeah,
it's climbing tends to be
does
the
that
least
seem
important.
like kind of the arc that we would you were thinking?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's a climbing podcast, so we have to get to that eventually. But I think climbing tends to be the least interesting part of people.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I mean, it depends on the person, but
yeah, it depends.
Yeah, but there's that. I mean, the whole point is to find something beyond that to talk about.
One thing I do want to talk about to start with.
Okay, we're going.
Is you mentioned, like, because this is not my first time, with Chris here at the Enormocast, right? So we, like, 6 years or so, you had interviewed us, me and my buddy Corbin Brady, for this Shred All Fear thing. The guitars, real electric guitars that we didn't know how to play, that we were hauling up desert towers and Yosemite walls and all that silly stuff. And you told me that you don't really remember exactly the reason why that you didn't publish it or never came out. Well, the reason was because it was absolutely garbage. I mean, you asked us a question, and I would be like, I distinctly remember you asking, like, hey, like, what's the difference between, like, you guys are going to go climb this aid route, so, like, what is A2 versus C2? And I was looking at you thinking, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Of course, like, what the difference is. Why are you asking me? And it took me, the whole 2 hours of the podcast to realize, oh, he wasn't asking me so I could tell him. He was asking me so I could communicate with the listeners.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And beyond that, the thing that I remember most distinctly was when we came over to your place to do the interview. You were like, oh, hey, yeah, tell me all your stories. We're having a good time. You fed us a bunch of, pasta and spaghetti, and we were drinking. It was a good time. And they're like, all right, cool, let's get the microphones out. And then you asked me the same questions that you'd asked me a couple hours ago when we first walked in the door.
Right.
And all my mojo was gone. I was like, right. I gave you the good one right away, and now I just have the leftovers. And it was a total nightmare.
Well, to be honest with you, I've actually learned a lesson about, I mean, not specifically that, because I honestly don't remember. Sometimes I actually, there's been a few that I've recorded and not put out. Most of them, it's because of technical stuff. I go back and listen to it, and I didn't set something right, and, like, it's fucked. Mm-hmm. And I can't do anything about it. Sometimes you can do stuff about it. Sometimes you can't. Like, this is, now that there's so many podcasters out there that they're all learning that too. Like, sometimes your best intention and you just forgot to press the button that did that thing. Yeah. And you're just like, whatever. So sometimes that they, I get these backlogs, and things get so backlogged that they are no longer relevant. Or in a couple cases, I've actually just forgotten that I've had them.
Oofda.
And people have gotten in touch with me like, whatever happened to that? And then, I put them out, but you guys never did that. So there's a possibility that I just never even, like, checked it out and just forgot about it.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to hear what you have to say if you go back and listen to it. Because
I'm going to.
For the last 6 years, I've been 100% confident it was because it was just a terrible, terrible production.
I do remember, and this is a common, this is something that happens to me all the time. It's like, I do 2 of these a month. And so it's like, I've got 190 of them. So you're just, you're fishing, and the lobbing the question into like sort of stunned or mumbled silence, or like, it definitely, like, you feel it. And then if like, you guys, I think, in the room felt it, and then it gets worse.
It's a slippery slope for sure to botch something.
Well, the thing that got you in the room, and this is all still online, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
was the Shred All Fear thing, which was this thing you guys were doing, and whoever's listening, like, if you haven't seen it, you gotta go back. Like, the high DIY production value, hilarious. And that was kind of, I got in touch with you guys after that. I'm like, this shit's hilarious. Like, who are you guys? Like, what are you doing? And that's what kind of got you in the room. But, like, it was kind of a ways after that. And I think too, like, it felt like a little bit of the like, energy had already kind of fallen out of what you guys were doing. The magic was
gone. Well, we were actually, we were mid-trip. We were driving from Kansas City to Mexico on that trip, and you're like, "Oh, tell us about what you're going to do, and maybe on the way back we'll do like a recap or whatever."
Right.
Well, when we went out there, we just fucking failed miserably at everything. So there was like not enough stoke to put the mullet and the mustache and the guitar and like shoot any footy or do anything with it. We were just like,
you're not riding high.
Yeah. So when we came back, we had our heads low, and we just blew right past Carbondale to get home as soon as possible.
Well, and that's funny because, I mean, you're so like, we'll get into like your life changing, because this, you were just like, just a couple of goofballs, right?
Oh yeah.
And you're definitely not anymore. You're a published author of sorts. You're an EMT. I mean, it's like EMTing in an ambulance grows you up a little bit. But either way, I mean, the thing that's funny about that is that like abject failure, which is what you maybe were feeling, is a story. It's like an incredible story. If you like kind of realize the potential of that. But when you're a young climber, you just think, oh, I'm a failure and no one wants to hear about it.
Yeah, like this is my chance and I fucked it up.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's doing this in particular has taught me just so how potent like failure stories really are.
Oh yeah, because they're relatable because we all fail
totally.
all the time.
Yeah, and it's like, they're unforgettable in a lot of ways too, in a way that like, like super high like triumphs are memorable, but like, a good trip where everything went really well and like you got some shit done, those are forgettable trips.
Oh yeah, that's not adventure. That's just like performing.
So it's like the extremes are the cool shit, and one of those extremes is like total failure. I mean, epics, all the sort of surrounding stuff around an epic, like Rock and Ice has their epics issues because epics failure is awesome.
Yeah,
so,
we remember. Well, we remember and we learn a lot out of pain. We learn some and we remember some out of pleasure, but we remember and learn a lot out of painful experiences.
Yeah.
So
pleasure doesn't teach you shit.
They're just in there. They're a part of you.
Pleasure teaches you the wrong lessons.
Yeah, it teaches you how to be a dick sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like pleasure is the whole reason I'm still like wasting my life climbing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get that pleasure that I once had from it that I don't even know if I get from it anymore.
Yeah.
But let's not get into my cynicism. So Let's talk about the book then. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Can we go to that?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. So tell me about the book. Explain what it is, and then we'll talk about like what inspired you to put out a book.
Yeah. So the book is a collection of
What's it called?
It's called Everything I Love More: True Tales of Rocks and Rails. It's a collection of true short stories from my time traveling the country, hitchhiking, hopping freight trains, doing a lot of climbing, a lot of general self-destructive behavior. And it was all originally just stories that I had in my journal. And then as I kind of got older into my later 20s, I realized that there was a lot of things not working in my life. And I kind of did a lot of self-reflection and discovered that these stories were, although the best parts of my life, were also the reasons that I was like destroying a lot of other good parts of my life. They're just kind of how really, really great things can have that dichotomy.
Oh, okay.
Just because in the moment you're like, man, I feel so good. I'm having such a great time. I'm using all my time really well. I'm crushing. I'm traveling. I'm seeing the world. I'm getting all these experiences. But I'm like way over here on the left, like super extreme, literally chasing after freight trains to get on them, and then over here on the other side, on the far right, like I'm totally neglecting like my girlfriend and my family and everyone else who cares about me. So it's a lot of self-reflection and acknowledging that even though these were some of the best times of my life, they were really self-destructive.
Yeah, I love that actually in it, because that's a game. I mean, we've talked about it on here before, the dirtbagging thing and all that, and that's. I think I'm pretty good, and like my friend Andrew Brish are at, we talk a lot about sort of the dark side of the Instagram, van life kind of happiness, and I mean it's been remarked on everywhere. We're not like making anything revelatory, but when I read the book, that what you were sort of that thematic thing was pretty apparent, and also made me think about it. It's just like there's this romantic idea of this guy, on the road, literally even referring to that book, if you will. It's like, but underneath it all is just this, it's kind of this heavy dark side. And it's like On the Road, the Kerouac book is this thing that so many sort of teenagers find and like get all this inspiration.
It's the Bible, bro.
Yeah. But then, it's like, don't look into who Kerouac sort of really turned out to be.
Yeah.
Do not do that. Like, because I studied it in college, like that was a kind of an emphasis of mine for a year, was the beats. And it was just like, at the end of it, I was just like, oh, that wasn't a good idea. Like,
yeah.
It's like when you find out Thoreau used to go home when it got cold. It's like, oh, fuck, dude.
Yeah,
like what?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he just would hike down the road and go home and have his mom make him some soup.
Yeah. You're getting pushed into all these crazy scenarios by people who don't even, aren't even a part of it.
But nevertheless, so it's like the dark side was there. But I don't think the dark side, when you're talking about riding freight, is very far away at any point. I mean, you guys are doing it for like sort of like a crazy adventure, but you dip right into this lifestyle of people who have, long since like embraced that darkness. So talk a little bit. I mean, you're a teenager, growing up where again?
Fargo, North Dakota.
Fargo.
West Fargo, North Dakota.
I mean,
it's a very big town.
Yeah, it's like, what is it? Like Yosemite, the Gunks, Fargo, Boulder is pretty much like
it's the center of the universe, really.
Totally,
I mean, you want to go climbing, you want to go snowmobiling, we got it all.
Nice. You want to snowmobile to climbing?
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that a lot around here, but let's not get into that. The backcountry skiers do it, man. And there's like all these like super remote sun-blasted cliffs that are just not worth developing because you can't climb there when you can get to them.
Okay.
But if you could snowmobile to them.
All right.
But anyway, I don't have a spare.
I can't feel my toes right now, so I'm willing to get cold.
I can't afford a $15,000 sled. I don't know how anybody does, but what were we talking about? Oh yeah. So you're in Fargo.
Yeah, Fargo.
You're a teenager at some point. I don't know when this started. You're probably doing like all the normal teenage rebellious crap. When did you think about like, I got to get out of this town and my way to do it is on a freight train?
Well,
or maybe lead me up even from further away than that.
I always knew that I was going to leave town because it's like a tiny ass town with kind of nothing for me there.
Right.
For people who like to snowmobile and hunt and drink and do I don't even know what they do up there anymore.
Not in that order though. I think the drinking is sort of first or right after the snowmobiling.
I think it's like speckled in across the day, very healthy dose.
Yeah.
I've always known that I was going to leave. Like that was pretty obvious, but I never like knew where I was going to go or what I was going to do or anything like that. Growing up, we had the train tracks like really close to our backyard. So to get away from town or to find, a place where we could play that wasn't just a playground or, a friend's house, where we could like really have adventure. My first time, air quote, having adventure was like, elementary school, just throwing rocks at the trains as they went by. So they've always been like a really strong presence in my life. But it wasn't until I moved away from Fargo, for a girl, which is a whole nother terrible story. But it wasn't until I moved away that I had that independence to really just kind of do the things I was inspired by.
Right.
That I went back and looked and it's like, oh well, I mean, there's no reason that I can't get on that train right now and just go do whatever. And that's when it really just started just like hammering through the
How
adventures.
far away did you move?
I moved from Fargo to Kansas City, Missouri.
Right.
So that's like 8 hours, a couple 100 miles or so. Not terribly far away. I could go back every once in a while, but I had no intention of doing so it wasn't a big deal. But the trains were like, Kansas City is like one of the biggest train hubs. It's like they're everywhere. Like it was my first time living in a city, my first time seeing what a real freight yard looked like and seeing all the options. It's like I could get on that one and it could go fucking anywhere.
Right.
It could go to the East Coast or the West Coast, and I have no idea. And like that sense of having to go for it, and once you're on it, you're committed because there's no coming off.
Right.
Was like absolutely intoxicating. Like it was full value. Like all I could focus on in that moment was this happening.
Right.
And that was like a really big relief for like all the stuff going on in my head, in my teenage years.
So let me get a little sort of timeline then. So you're probably what age about when you moved to Kansas City?
19 or 20.
Yeah. So, and had you become a climber at that point yet?
Yeah. Air quotes climber, right? Like I had, my high school girlfriend had broken up with me by the time I made it to college, by the time I graduated. And we'd been dating for
graduated high school.
Yeah. Graduated high school. And we've been dating for like 2 years, which was like an eternity back then.
Yeah,
and so like my life was like falling apart. I was like, I'd open my eyes after rubbing them from crying so much and salt all over my face, and I'd look around and I'd say like this whole new world where I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with my life. Like this girl who's the first person to agree to have sex with me is like my entire life, and now I don't have that. So it's like the very next day, I went to the local YMCA.
Agreed.
And like,
I love it's so, agreed to have sex with you is the perfect line. Well, I mean, from a boy's perspective.
Well,
of it,
there's a lot to unpack there. Growing up in the Midwest, thinking that it's like a hunter pray kind of situation.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you want to talk about 2020 liberal politics right now?
I don't.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm not dissing you. I'm saying that's like exactly the way you thought.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like as a high school boy, you're
like
just
someone like, will
who's
someone
gonna
do this
agree
for me?
this?
I need someone to do this for me, or I'll explode.
Yeah, exactly. Literally.
But yeah, so I open my eyes and she's gone. I have nothing else, in my young eyes. I have nothing else going for me. So go to the local YMCA the very next day, get a belay card. And it's the first time that I had used my whole body to do anything athletic. Like I had skateboarded before, but that was mostly just kind of like legs and then eating shit a lot. It's the first time that I had like felt good about what was happening with my physical form. And it was like really exciting. But it was really limited to climbing at the YMCA every other week or something.
Nice.
Nothing. I would never like say that like, I was a fucking climber back then. It wasn't until I moved to Kansas City and got a job at a gym that like really opened up my whole world.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, let's go back to the freight rail thing.
Yeah.
It's a big part of your book. I remember you talked about it when we first met as well. So, run us through the decision the first time to be in, like what kind of preparation you made, or was it like on a whim? What was the story?
Yeah. Well, I was living in Kansas City. I had no girlfriend, a job, like a super flexible part-time job, a decent amount of savings. And I had no reason to not do, I was super privileged. I had no reason to not do anything I wanted.
Right.
And this was like the time that I could spend, if I got on a train and I ended up in Colorado instead of Texas, it wouldn't be a big deal. It wouldn't matter because I had time to get back. So like that was like when I was like, okay, we're gonna go all in. So and I was like listening to a lot of Bob Dylan back then, like really getting heavy in the rambling days, Woody Guthrie, all that stuff. So I thought, I'll get like my smallest pack, I'll get the shittiest gear, whatever it is. I didn't have a smartphone back then. I just had a little flip phone. All paper maps, all that fun stuff. I was going to map it out and then just do my best to figure out how to get to wherever I was going to go or wherever I ended up. And it was...
Were you telling anyone about this beforehand? Or was your buddy on board yet? Did Corbin jump freight with you too?
No.
He was a climbing guy.
Yeah, he's just... Right. It seemed really important that I be by myself. I don't know if it was because the experience demanded it or because I didn't have any friends yet in Kansas City.
Right.
I was already alone, so like it just seemed pretty natural. But I found that, being on the side of a freight train all alone, or like, and not knowing where you're going, or not knowing if you're going to get on or get off, or how cold it's going to be, or whatever, being alone for all of that gave a lot of time for introspection and forced me to figure things out on my own.
Right.
And it forced me to actually do things. Because, like, if I wanted to get on this train, I wouldn't turn to my side and ask my bro if, like, that's the one we should get on. I would just, like, do that.
Right.
And it was really liberating for sure.
Yeah. So what kind of, did you have any beta? Like how do you even approach this?
Yeah, that's tough. Like, that's super tough. It's like, you'll hear some people talk about what's called a crew change. Mm-hmm. And that's basically... some freight hobo's big dirty journal with like their scratches, and maybe they got like some information from Union Pacific, but really what that means is like it's just a book that says like, oh, the train is going to go from Kansas City to Lincoln and the crews are going to swap, and then from Lincoln it's going to go to Chicago or whatever.
Right.
But that's not really a thing anymore. That doesn't, if you hear someone say like, oh yeah, I got the crew change, I got the beta, it's like,
don't worry, I'm not gonna like.
It's full. It's not the thing.
If
anymore.
I hear someone say that for any reason, something's gone terribly wrong in my life. Anyway.
Yeah, probably. But also, like, there's some phone numbers you can call if you know the right phone number to call and the right stuff to punch in. You can look up the information on some of them. That phone number changes, and the validation passwords change. Yeah. For example, like if you go to the right catch out, which is like a place you wait around until the right train comes so you can catch it and get out. If you look around, you can read the graffiti if you know how to translate it, and you can kind of get information about which way something's going to go here or there. Uh-huh. Only problem is I never had like a hobo mentor or was a part of any of that. I didn't know any of this stuff. I was just kind of like saying, okay, these transient kids that I like will go to like underground punk shows with. They say that coal cars that are empty go toward the mountains, and coal cars that are full will go away.
Right.
And that makes a lot of sense,
sure.
Right? If that's where coal comes from. So I would just do that and just hope that it would end up where I was trying to go. Mm-hmm. And it rarely works, but where you're trying to go is doesn't exist when you're like rambling. Right. Going somewhere or going is what matters, not going somewhere.
Right.
So it didn't really matter.
Right. So what would you do when you got places? Like what was, I mean, you do get off the
Take
trains.
a shit. First thing I do is take a shit.
Right.
Absolute first thing.
These are the rules.
Yeah.
People, write this stuff down if you're listening.
Yeah. The first train that I
That's
ever.
funny you say that because I always tell people when they're riding buses and stuff in like third world or semi-third world countries, I'm like, do not pass up a chance to take a crap. Like never. If the bus stops and you can figure out it's going to be there for 3 minutes, go find it. Pay your pesos.
Make it happen.
And get it out because you do not know when that thing's stopping again. It's
all right.
You know,
I'll have to write that one down.
Well, it's the same. It's not as like permanent, the movement, but you can get on a bus you think you're going to be on for an hour and you can be on it for like 6.
Well, my problem with that was the first train that I hopped was from Denver. I was helping a friend move to Denver and they weren't coming back. So I got on a train to go somewhere else. And it took me south across the Colorado Rockies and ended up in La Junta, Colorado. And it had been all night. I hadn't slept in like 20 hours. And I had to go to the bathroom so bad. It's like, all right, if I can like get off this train, run over to that hotel, use the bathroom super quick, I might be able to get back on. And like the second that I got off, it started moving again. But since I had committed to going to the bathroom, there was no turning back. So then I was stranded in La Junta for a while, and then had to hitchhike home.
Great town, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. They cool sewer system. I don't know.
Right. Are you a urban spelunker?
A sewer surfer? Yeah, I used to be. I mean, yeah, it's all kind of like entwined, for sure.
Right. So maybe we'll get more stories of this, the jump in freight, but it's a pretty interesting thing to be doing. You know what, like 6-7 years ago? Yeah. When was the last time you were on a train?
Oh, the last time I was on a train was 2012. The last time I dreamed about being on a train was last night.
Okay. So you may go back.
Yeah, I mean it's almost guaranteed. It's not a part. It's kind of like it's not a part that leaves you like that potent adventure. It's like you will want to go do it again for sure. It's just a matter of like right place, right time, and convincing the wife that that's gonna be okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, she's your wife now.
Yeah. Right. So there's no turning back. She's already she's bought the ticket.
Yeah. But this is Jasmine.
Yeah.
From the book. Yeah. So this is the person that you were basically like leaving behind all the time.
Yeah. It's very sensitive. Yeah. I'm putting my seat time in by being a good person for a while to
try to
get it every once in a while.
Hopefully
Maybe
she's not listening.
Yeah. She wouldn't waste her time.
Yeah.
She's heard me. She hears me talking enough. She hears me talking enough.
So when I waste time, that's right. My girlfriend doesn't listen to him either. She says she'll listen to him when I'm dead. To sort of mourn it, to remember me by.
Shit.
Assuming I die first, right? But what was I going to ask you? Oh yeah, one last question on that actually before I move on. So what about like, I mean, in everywhere in the world, you know, whatever thing you're doing, the most dangerous thing can be other people. What about that? Like, who's out there and you know, definitely all sorts, I'm sure, but
it's a colorful cast for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you have everything from like like your meth head truckers, right, who are just cranking, you know, just trying to get across the country as fast as they can. But then you also have on the other end of the spectrum, like really relatable people, you know, like real dirtbags, like someone who the only thing they own is this car and they're just driving across the country and then they're going to be begging for money here and there. Mm-hmm. So like, and that person's kind of relatable because they're just trying to get around however they can. And they're not really that much of a threat. They're usually hippies. They're smoking weed the whole time. It's like not a big deal. It's pretty chill. Drugs are usually involved. It's kind of like the theme across the spectrum.
Right.
It's all kinds of stuff.
Right.
They're actually a big part of the reason that it's not that sweet, to be honest. Because if you're hitchhiking, right? Like, when was the last time you picked up a hitchhiker?
It hasn't been too long, actually.
But was it like a skier or something?
You
saw a puffy jacket and you're like, yeah, I'll pick that guy up.
Or like the big one is going south from here to Marble.
Okay.
A lot of people, and so you kind of know, like, oh, this guy lives up in Marble. Like there's weird fucking people up in Marble. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, you're like, he's just a dude like lives in a shack up there.
Yeah, but you drive past someone and you see their tan Carhartt jacket and they're like, and you know, their smelly suitcase, and you can tell they reek, and you're like, that guy's not getting in my car.
Right.
Those are the people that you're hanging out with all the time. They're not inherently bad people, but they can be very hard to relate to, right? Because they live these entire lives outside of the confines of our reality. I shouldn't say confines, but the structures of the reality that we live in.
Right.
Right. They're outside almost all the time. And for every single outdoor person that's out here, even the dirtbags, like that's probably not the case.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're dipping. You're dipping in and dipping out.
Yeah, these dudes, they're just outside all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like one minor thing. It sounds like it could be cool, but like the reason that all their skin is wrinkles and leather is because they're just baking in the sun all the time.
Right.
And so like that's like a minor way that they are like completely separate from our reality.
Right.
And so it's hard to relate, and it can be hard to communicate in a way where you both are on the same wavelength, speaking the same language, because a lot of times there's like critical mental health problems there. There's upbringing problems. Like people don't often end up on the street for no reason. The reason I was traveling the rails and stuff was because I was running from my own problems, which luckily I have like the opportunity to kind of deal with more healthy these days. But a lot of people don't have that. You know, that person, that person is doing something similar where they're running from an abusive home or whatever it is, and they're hopping freight train and their legs get cut off. Well, now they're that person that has their legs cut off on the side of the street begging for money because they literally can't do anything else.
Right. Let me ask you about, you keep talking about these things in your head, these problems. You want to talk about them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
hard yes. And I'll tell you why, Chris, because mental health is something that needs to be spoken about extremely openly.
Okay.
Reason being, people are really ashamed of it, or they feel like there's something wrong with them. I want to address it directly because it's important and there's no reason not to. A lot of us with mental health problems, we have this inherent feeling like there's something that is wrong, not just wrong with us, but wrong because of us. Like we kind of internalize that, whether it's that pain or that anxiety or that depression, whatever it is, it's internalized, and it feels embarrassing to acknowledge it. It's really difficult to even recognize it. So the more that people communicate about it openly, the more it's realized that this is a part of everyday life that a lot of people deal with, and that it should be acknowledged and should be addressed.
Right.
And that's like, especially like on the street, in an ambulance, you know, like if I'm wearing a uniform, I don't look at someone and say, hey, are you like, you know, kind of, do you like depressed sometimes? Or like, do you like feel like hurting yourself? No, I look at someone in the eyes and I say like, hey, Chris, do you feel like killing yourself today? Because they need to, it needs direct,
right,
absolute, unequivocal, because it needs to be seen that someone in a uniform isn't afraid to talk about this.
Right.
If you went to your doctor tomorrow and you said, hey, like, I think I'm kind of depressed, and your doctor got kind of weird and it's like, ooh, yeah, hey, bud, you know, kind of like treat you differently. You'd be like, well, this was a mistake.
Right.
Shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
It's really, really important to be open about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just want to like frame it because, you know, we started this about how you got broken up with by your girlfriend. And that's kind of like, boo-hoo. Welcome to everybody who ever graduated high school with a long-term relationship.
Totally.
So, you know, that's kind of what I want to go here is like, we're not talking about just standard, like, 18-year-old boy bummer about his girlfriend.
I'm sad.
Yeah. She was the love of my life.
Yeah, no, and
so, you know, let's talk about it. Like, what were you dealing with? When did you recognize it? That kind of stuff.
When did I recognize that I had a problem? That's the beautiful, you know, terribly beautiful thing about mental health problems is that you can simultaneously recognize that you have a problem without acknowledging it or really even truly recognizing it. Like I've always kind of known in the back of my head that people shouldn't be crying themselves to sleep this often. Mm-hmm. Right. But it took another maybe 10 years or so to actually acknowledge it and say like, okay, this is a pattern of behavior that is not normal and needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know.
Well, I can imagine as a boy young man growing up in fucking Fargo, especially, or anywhere in the country or in the world. I mean, you just don't admit to those things. You don't talk about those sorts of things to just any old person.
I'm not allowed to cry when I watch Titanic, How am I supposed to tell someone that I cry every single night?
Right.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Midwest, it's everywhere, but I think it's still pretty prolific in the Midwest. I go home and I see family members who still have to act out entire lives to avoid acknowledging that there's something going on up there.
Right.
Which is not their fault at all, but it's just part of the game.
So this is from kid all the way up.
Oh yeah. My family is I say thoroughly broken, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Many divorces for many different reasons, back and forth. Mm-hmm. Rarely having the same bed to sleep in because we go to sleep one place, wake up another place. Mm-hmm. And I think that all of that has really had a big effect. And it's just it's as far back as I can remember, adults were always asking me "Hey, are you feeling okay? Are you just tired?" And I would say, "Yeah, I'm just tired."
Right.
When really it was no, I could just cry for no reason right now.
Right.
And it took me, like I said, the better part of a decade to acknowledge that maybe I should start doing some self-care and some work to acknowledge it.
Yeah. And what is that? I mean, when you finally made a decision other than hopping freights and climbing buildings, which we haven't talked about, but maybe we don't need to. It's in the book. But what did it look like to have that, that sort of self-actualization of saying wow, this is something I need to deal with or I'm going to end up dead, which was, I think, probably an eventual, eventuality, whether it was from drinking drugs or, offing yourself.
It's an ongoing conversation, Chris.
Yeah.
For sure. It's, I thought I had the answer with all these stories in the book, with all the freight train hopping. I thought maybe I was just living the wrong life. Maybe if I'm constantly chasing adventure and doing these big, dangerous things, this is what makes me happy right now. And I haven't felt like shit in a long time. So if I keep doing this, I just need to be living the right life. Mm-hmm. And then come to find out, 5 years of living like that, everything else kind of falling apart in the wayside, that's not the right way to go about things, right? And it has an expiration date. You can only do these things so many times before your number gets pulled.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one thing we just didn't mention in the freight conversation is how dangerous it is.
Oh yeah. I
mean, other than we were talking about the other people that can cause problems, but just getting completely decimated by a gigantic freight train is not.
I'm really psyched to be alive, let alone walking.
Right. Because the legs off thing is the big famous one.
Yeah,
swinging under.
Because it happens.
Yeah,
and it almost happened to me, and it's
It happened when I was in college at CSU, and because the train rolls right through, almost through campus, right next to campus. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever ridden train through Fort Collins, but right downtown, the old rail, and it slows down to 20. I mean, super
Perfect.
slow, and so drunk kids coming home from the bar jump on it, and I know it's happened more than once. But even when I was there, a girl just lost her or one of her off at the ankle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously she was drunk and not a pro, but it also wasn't moving. It's not moving very fast at all.
Well, that's the great thing is
actually my friends jumped it and rode it to Wyoming once too.
To Wyoming, nice.
Yeah. So
that sounds like a good ride. It sounds pretty.
Yeah.
The funny thing is when the trains are moving slow, they look like they're moving slow because they're usually moving
so
fast.
Huge, yeah.
But then once you start running next to them, you're like, fuck, I don't know if I can catch that ladder. So yeah, it happens all the time, and I'm very grateful to be walking.
Okay, so
here.
back to what we were just sidelined, back to the freight train. I'm so interested in this whole thing, that a kid in 2012 would be jumping freight. But so back to this idea of sort of recognizing, now it's recognizing what you talked about in the book. This idea that, okay, I thought I found this cure, but the cure is now has its own sort of hooks in me, as it were.
It's got its own repercussions that are not full. So then I have to acknowledge, okay, maybe I didn't find the perfect cure, and if that's the case, then what's next? Mm-hmm. And that was actually a great part of writing the book, was the experience of having to go back and relive all of these things and kind of break them down and reconcile with, how they really were destroying things, and it gave me a very clear picture of, what I should be doing to move forward.
Right.
And moving forward looks a lot like constant reassessing, right? Like, am I just doing way too much over here out left? And when was the last time I was home to like cook dinner and do the dishes, right? When was the last weekend that I spent home? Right. So I have to be balancing these things. It's everything is a balance, right? You hear people talk about balance a lot, because it's a cliche, and oftentimes things are cliche because we all eventually get to the objective truth that lies within them.
Right.
And that is balance for me.
Yeah, well, I think the funny thing with balance for climbers too, it's like everybody feels like their balance is off because the real life is actually way too weighted, and we need more balance because we need to climb more to offset.
Oh,
all
yeah.
that, you know what
Oh,
I mean?
yeah.
That's the balance like that we're looking for, and climbing or whatever adventure you guys were doing. Yeah, you were on the opposite thing of like, wow, we're way over on this side, and we need to tip the scale, or I need to tip the scales back to some family life, some support for my girlfriend, now wife.
Yeah.
Yeah,
huge.
And acknowledge support from them, because I imagine, to me, in reading the book, you definitely talk about your now wife, Jasmine, as being this thing that was way over there.
A nuisance.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the title of the book is that, everything I loved more than I loved her.
Yeah,
which
pretty
was all
much.
these adventures. And so, not to spoil the end.
Yeah, you just ruined the last sentence, bro. No, it's good. People need to know
I'll take
why.
that out.
People need to know why I picked such a bad name. That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
So, but the thing is that you've got this person, and I'm sure, and actually there's acknowledgement in there about how difficult it is for someone, to not be needed, and if she loved you, and she probably understood these problems better than you did, and yet you were also like, rejecting her overtures to help you, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, in her eyes,
and that's like more painful than ignoring them altogether or whatever.
Oh,
in a
yeah.
lot of ways.
Yeah. In her eyes, she has a safe home and loving arms.
Why can't I?
Yeah. Look, you need to like go hang out on this filthy freight train and like be hungry for a month. What the fuck?
With like sketchy, totally sketchy people.
Could you imagine like someone turning you down so they could just like go live in a pile of shit for a while? Like what a waste. What that'd be rough on your self value for sure.
For sure. Yeah. But she was there for a long time.
Yeah, she stuck through.
Yeah.
She stuck through. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't just like, she has her own self-worth.
Yeah,
she definitely fought and laid some fucking words down that I had to listen to and figure out and translate. And honestly, things are better now for it.
Right.
Because we've figured out who we are a lot in our own ways through these push and pulls. So
right. And so at some point was she then in Kansas City with you, or was that?
Yeah.
Was she,
I met her in Kansas City. That's where she lives.
And another relationship I want to talk about, a totally flip side, that I think sounds like was an important one is a relationship with this friend of yours, Corbin.
Yeah.
And maybe some other guys too, but he's the guy I met. Mm-hmm. He seems to be your climbing outlet sort of partner.
He was one of the keys that like kind of opened this adventure, travel, danger, whatever world you want to call freight train hopping.
Right.
He was more so, he was the bridge from that lifestyle to the focused purpose of climbing.
Right.
So, going on climbing trips with him, he introduced me to the desert. He's like, hey, we're going to go on this 2-week-long climbing trip. We're going to climb Castleton Tower, ancient. We're going to do the classic, stuff. And he showed me that you can do all these things while having focus and intent rather than just wandering around, getting off on not dying a couple of times.
Right.
And that blew my world apart. That's my foundation right now, truly, is being able to get the excitement from traveling and seeing new things while also having objectives and having things I can tick off my list and feeling accomplished and coming home in one piece, focus and with intent, rather than coming home and being like, oh, that was fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, it's like that toilet at the base of Castle Lake can get nasty, but you don't have to actually live in it.
Yeah.
So you can go climbing, get your thrills, and then actually have a nice place to stay. And and the people around you are like relatively cool and like, not trying to steal your shit or anything.
Yeah,
Although
and
sometimes they are, but yeah, so I mean, that seems like like you owe him a bit.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, I mean, he taught me how to do a lot of multi-pitch climbing. Like
Right.
he introduced me to that whole world. So I do owe him a lot, but I've also put up with a lot of his shit too. Right. So, it's kind of, give and take a little bit.
Yeah.
If I never hear him whistle again, I think that will be okay.
Is he a nervous whistler? Like,
no, he's an excited whistler, and
really?
he's so good. It's so loud. It's piercing.
Really?
It's difficult to be in the car because it just goes straight into your ears.
Yeah. So when I looked at it, it felt like a pretty natural kind of move to climbing. Again, I think, something that you can choose, like you said, with intent. I think you can probably put a little bit of a start finish on the way it works in your life, so to speak. Does that make sense? Like, you've got your trips, you've got your, you're going out, but I'm for sure coming back on this date or whatever it happens to be. I mean, unless something happens, but, versus this just wild endlessness to a idea of a freight ride somewhere.
Well, at the very least, if you don't hear from me on Tuesday, I'm going to be in this canyon.
Yeah.
At the very least, the general area where I'll be.
Right.
It's a plan.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like the idea of you can still, I mean, I think it's always like the cliche in the sort of outside world is that, we're all these daredevils, we're these thrill seekers. But whether you call it like, death wish or whatever, like the heightened awareness that comes with climbing is why we do it. When people are like the danger is not, it's not why we do it, but it's like even sport climbing feels thrilling.
Oh yeah.
And the heightened awareness that comes from the thrills, we can't, I mean, we'll go play golf if that's not like part of your thing.
Yeah. I think what it is
climbing high on a boulder is thrilling.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially sometimes if it's tall, right?
Yeah.
But the idea of if you're the kind of person who's just like so much going on in your brain, whether it's just a lot of traffic, like you're really anxious, or you have a little traffic, but it's all super negative, like you're very depressive. The idea of running after a freight train and having to catch the ladder and having to get on, for that split second, the only thing in the world that exists is that ladder and those wheels right behind it, which is intoxicating. With climbing, you still get a very similar version of it. Right. It's like you said with sport climbing, if you're clipping bolts, like you're pretty much good for the most part, but you still feel like the only thing in the world that matters is if I get my pinky on this crimp. I need to get all the pads going. And that is just as intoxicating, but when you fall, you're not going to be like losing your legs, hopefully. I
mean, but you do like tons of adventure climbing too that, I'm sure you have climbed even recently plenty of stuff where you're not falling. Like you can't fall here. Yeah. It's a different thing than sport climbing, but it's a focusing agent. It's this thing of like, I have to be in this moment now, not thinking about, whatever it is that bummed me out last night or something like that.
Yeah. Or, what my teacher told me in 7th grade once. Like that's not in my head right now. I'm focused on this sandstone hold not snapping and falling to my death.
Doing the Enormocast is actually a lot like that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. We're in, people always are like, I'm like, oh yeah, we've been going for like an hour 10 and they're like, what? So yeah, we're in the flow state right now. Can you feel it?
Well, it's your chocolatey brown eyes. I'm just fixed. I'm fixed, bro.
No, it's the chocolatey brownie that my girlfriend gave you that's still lingering in your system from 6 years ago. Her weed brownies are legendary.
Yeah. I was just a young virgin pup before that, and I got wrecked.
Anyway, let's not actually. We'll keep her name out of this, but so let me move here to another thing. Finding out, and there's no stories of this, and maybe the volume 2 will incorporate what you do now.
Everything I loved even more.
Yeah. But you ride an ambulance. You're an EMT on an ambulance.
Yeah.
So, that whole profession is fraught with this same adrenaline addiction kind of thing, like life consuming sort of, highs and lows.
High adrenaline, high ego. Yeah, for
And
sure.
So, I mean, is this all like in the arc, do you think? Is this like I'm like pop psychology guy like I do on the Enormocast, but like here, is this like, okay, I can be a respectable part of the community, have a job, get a paycheck, have a real life, and I can, my little Jones is fixed on this as well.
Very much so. It didn't start out like that,
Right.
but it's very much the case. Like, there's a lot of conversation in climbing right now about how it's a really privileged sport and it costs X and requires Y, all these things. And it's, for the most part, it's pretty true. Like, you do need the time and money to do these things. So looking back after years of just kind of doing whatever the fuck I wanted, whether it was hopping trains or traveling to climb, I realized how little that I contributed to the world. And getting into EMS, working on an ambulance, for me personally, is a really great way to contribute on a regular basis every single week and still be able to, like you said, get my rocks off on the rocks, so to speak. And it's the best worst job in the world.
Right.
Yeah. It's supremely exciting and supremely boring.
Right.
I could go into shift and I could work for 12 hours and sit and watch TV for 12 hours. Or I could be running back to back to back to back, cardiac arrest, shooting, stabbing, whatever. It could be anything. So it's just all over the place, and can be super fun, but it's the most boring too.
It would be ironic if you were dealt with some train hopping accident. Have you had to do that yet?
I personally haven't. We get a lot of them in our district. We have a lot of train tracks running through Commerce City. Yeah. I've had climbers in the back of my ambulance.
Oh wow.
Which is terrifying. But we don't work anywhere near the mountains. Commerce City is pretty flat. Mm-hmm. But it can be very difficult when you see yourself or you see someone that in your patient. And that's like another whole other side of EMS where it's like also really difficult mentally.
From what I understand about mental health and things that you're dealing with, it's like a drug addiction where you can get clean, but it's never gone. And so it's like you talked about this train hopping and all this adventure, and it involved like urban climbing. You've got some great stories in there about urban climbing in like really bad neighborhoods and all the extra danger that goes with that. But that seemed like a cure, quote, air quotes, podcast air quotes that you can't see. And then it wasn't. And then, climbing seems to be working, but just personally, it's like there's the EMS, the street ambulance EMS thing is like just famously fraught with mental health pitfalls, Where are you with that? I mean, it's like, are you going to wake up in a couple of years and be like, holy crap, this is now like not doing this anymore?
That's really tough because actually being on the ambulance had as much, if not more, of a negative impact on my mental health as traveling and like freight train hopping and stuff. Because my service does 48-hour shifts, which means we're on call for 48 hours.
And you can go.
Yeah, you could go every single hour if that's what the city demands. I mean, we do have like some regulations in place here and there, but rarely is it something that we can just feel comfortable. Like I said, ego is really high, right? Like if you're the one like, hey, Captain, I need a safety nap. Then it's like, then you like, how do you fall asleep just telling someone you need a safety nap? You know what I mean? but all jokes aside, doing those 48-hour shifts is destructive to was destructive to my personal mental health and my relationship too, because I'm gone for 48 hours.
Right, so here you are
every
again.
time. Here we are. Yeah, same, like you said, same thing. I'm like, okay, I can't be doing this then if I'm going to be getting a quote real job, because if you're anyone who's looking to get into EMS, it's not so much of a quote real job because it doesn't pay very well. But that's beside the point. If I'm going to be getting this real job and kind of assimilating myself into society a little bit more, it's got to be something that's going to catch my attention. And working in ambulance absolutely does. But seeing all those things and working in the 48 hours more than anything is crippling mentally. Like their studies show that being up for 24 hours is pretty much the same as being shit-faced wasted. And so I can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep at the wheel of an ambulance before. Like, how terrifying is that? And you work.
That's good to know.
Yeah, you work.
Remember when I see the ambulance coming the other way, it's like, yeah, maybe that guy's been up for 36
Yeah,
hours.
maybe that guy's been up for 36 hours. Maybe he just got done pumping on
job,
grandma's chest. Well,
no, they know.
oops. Yeah, they're aware. I mean, you don't know. That person that person's been up all day. They just got done running a couple dead people, a couple drunks, a couple, whatever. They've been doing the same bullshit for a long time. And now they're going to get off shift and they're going to go home and the sun is out and they have to like figure out if they're going to go to sleep. Do I stay up? Like what? After doing a couple of years of that, you end up in this constant state of fatigue and not just like, oh, I'm tired or my arms are fatigued. Like fatigue means you are a different person for a long extended period of time. It's like being a really boring drunk for a whole year straight.
Right.
And it totally changes everything. So the day that I stopped doing 48s was the immediate morning after a very long conversation with my wife where she's like, you got to figure something out. So I walked in the next day and said, hey, I know I'm scheduled for a 48 next week, but I can't do those anymore. I can give you all the 12s you want, but I can't do any 48s. And that again has been a very similar abrupt shift where like now I have a schedule again and now I can plan on things again. And I have like this whole life now. This last year, 2019 is my first year with like a regular scheduled life and maybe my entire time being an adult. And it's been incredible. I've gotten so much done. It's been like, I feel like I have the key to the world now that I have sleep in a schedule. It's amazing.
Right. Well, it's ironic because of course everybody's like, yeah, the 9 to 5's a killer. Like, the freedom of the road. And it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, it's like a schedule because I mean, having a like 2.5, 3-year-old is getting into that like no sleep land. I mean, it's serious. Parents, again, like dismiss it, but marriages end all the time with like toddlers. Really? I know because because it's so stressful and your life is so different and you're both exhausted all the time and not at the level you were, but still, I mean, even a little bit of exhaustion, changes your emotional reactions, changes your just cognitive reactions and like, yeah, it's hard to be loving and caring and looking out for another person when you're that tired, Yeah. And so it's like, I get it. And in my life now too, is like the schedule, even the small schedule is like this lifeline, Yeah. Except for the kid doesn't listen to the schedule. But other than that, it's working out. But I mean, between Steph and I, it's like, even if Miles doesn't listen to the schedule, we have a schedule. And we weren't doing that for the longest time because we were still in our old life of where you could just do whatever you wanted. Yeah. No needed.
Well, it's like the cliche, right? Yeah. Like the reason, going to bed every night and waking up every morning at the same time, the reason it's a cliche is because it objectively is fucking great for you.
Yeah. I mean, not objective. I mean, yeah, like objectively, scientifically, everything. Yeah. No, nobody.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's like
I going from this life of just kind of doing whatever and like getting up and going to bed whenever and like just working whenever I could to like, okay, this is my schedule. Like it's a superpower. Don't need that, huh?
Yeah, my pen's gone. I don't actually.
I've been watching you draw squares.
Everyone always does.
Yeah,
they always watch my notes.
Yeah, I'm not trying to read it because I don't be able to say the right words.
It's because that's how I'm a doodler.
Yeah,
like I think
that's
of
fair.
A doodler. Like
I support that.
This is my diagram of the two sides of a scale, even though it's just two boxes. So anyway. This is a common Enormocast thing, though, where I could tell when people are like, "What the fuck is he writing?" Not the words, but why is there like a fountain and a triangle and a little rocket ship?
No, I totally get it. Totally support it.
Yeah.
My high school social studies teacher didn't get it.
Okay, yeah, no, my teachers didn't get it either, dude. Yeah, some do, some don't.
Yeah,
you're not wasting time. You're thinking.
Mm-hmm. You need to have some part of your brain doing something so you can focus.
Yeah. If any teachers are listening, hopefully you're not one of those jerks. Just let them doodle. Yeah. They're fine.
Yes.
Okay. You can wipe it off the desk later as long as it's not a Sharpie. All right. So last thing, we've once again gone through a big fat climbing podcast without talking about climbing very much. I kept trying to steer it there, but more interesting things kept coming up. So, but let's just talk a little bit about who you are as a climber. You mentioned being a first ascensionist is like kind of your, at least right now, is like your thing that you're super into, which means To me, because I know where you climb a lot out in the swell and just in the desert. First ascending in most places besides the creek, and even the creek can be a lot of choss wrangling. You know. Can be dangerous. You know, let's face it, those peak chunks of rock come off in your lap sometimes or wherever. So talk a little bit about the climbing part of your life as it reflects right at this moment.
Well, right at this moment, the only thing that matters to me is first ascents. And I think it's the best. It's just like, it's the hardest. It requires the most tools. There's no map.
It's a train to nowhere.
It takes the most work.
Right?
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for disappointment constantly. And you talk about like choss and stuff, and that is that's a part of it, and that's it's not necessarily a fun part of it, but it's also like a fun part of it. It's the entire experience.
If you're a choss climber, it's fun.
Yeah, but like, getting into climbing is like, okay, cool. I started at the YMCA gym, right? This is fucking rad. How many times can I climb at the YMCA gym before this is not that rad anymore?
Right.
Not too much, right? Okay, cool. So I go to a real gym, or I go outside sport climbing for the first time. This is fucking rad.
Right.
How many bolts can I clip before this is not that rad anymore? Okay, I'll do some multi-pitch climbing. I'll play some gear. Like, how many multi-pitch routes can I do before I'm just kind of like going after the mountains to masturbate, right? So somewhere along the lines of like honing most of my skills to like I would say I kind of call it the hardcore mediocre level, like that 512 plus ish range. After that, mediocre people call media. He's rolling his eyes.
Yeah,
here.
he just got my podcast eye roll.
Well, people think of mediocre as like this like insult, right? But really, what does mediocre means? It just means that you're just not professional. Like, that's really all that means. You're just like an amateur, right? That's all that means. It doesn't mean that you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. But when you strip it all down to the basics and you get the grade inflation out of there and you get sport climbing out of there and stuff, climbing 512 plus trad is still like, that's like peeking into like upper level. I just want people to know that. Like, when you really break it down, there's not a lot of people that, even now, even professional climbers that just like walk up and have a 12 plus trad climb for lunch.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so I just want.
I am very good at making myself sound like an asshole. But what I'm trying to communicate is that like, after how long of like of doing any sport without, how many years am I going to spend tons of money and tons of time on the sport where I'm just doing stuff that other people are doing.
Right.
And for me, like, that hit pretty hard. I was like, I think I'm just going to stop climbing. I was almost just like, think the next hard route that I send will just be the last one because I'm kind of bored of it. And then I really started focusing on first ascents because it is so much work. It is so much disappointment. It's you require all these tools. Like, it feels like all these tools, sport, trad, boulder, all these things came to this accumulation of this is what they're for. It's for, now that you have these tools, you can on-site a 512, whether it's gear or bolts, limestone, sandstone, granite, whatever it is. And that's not going to prepare you to go ground up on any 512 anything.
Right.
So now I feel like I'm just entering the realm. Like, all this was just preparation to enter that realm of being able to hopefully tackle anything that comes up on the wall without, critical failure.
Right.
And so that part of it is seems like what has been rejuvenated my interest in the climbing at all.
And did you hit your mile?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah. I got these 5,450 something. So it's a little bit more.
So that was, explain that real quick.
Yeah. So, every year I try to have goals with climbing. One year it was like, I want to do my first ascent in a national park. And we did that in Rocky Mountain, and that was cool. And the next year was like, okay, like, I want to put up my first 513 gear line or whatever. And that was cool. And then, yada, yada, yada. It was mid 2019. I hadn't had a goal yet. But I had tons of these small first ascents, single pitch out in the desert, tower out in the desert, whatever. And then I decided, if I don't have the big one lined up that's worthy of my next progression, then I need to just do a shit ton of small stuff. And I found that the byproduct of just doing tons of first ascents on tons of different routes was that I actually learned how to do it a lot better. I was getting way more done. actually learned how to hand drill rather than faking it, stuff like that. It was a really productive year.
And you hit a mile.
Yep.
When? What date?
December 27th, 2019.
Oh, shit. Right on. Right in the end of it when it was all cold, too.
It was freezing. Yeah.
Because I remember you were talking about it, and then pretty much like right after you told me you had a little bit more to go, like the weather just shut down because December was gross in the desert,
rough.
too.
It was rough everywhere.
Blanketed with snow, yeah. So
yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks,
What's 2020? Do you let people know? Do you tip your hand?
Today's like it was January 13th right now, so I'm still kind of coasting off of that high and like trying to figure out what it is. We have a grant for Canada. Hopefully we'll find out like really soon if that goes through. Right. If not, I think I'm just going to just do as many wall routes as possible and just continue this pace. Cause I've now like I found that after a year of doing the same thing and focusing very heavily on it, it's just like really easy to maintain that. So I'm just going to try and just continue going bigger and harder.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's do like a super pro-sesh podcast outro.
Okay.
So Dakota Walz's book is Everything I Loved More, Tales of Rocks and Rails, available everywhere you can buy books.
Yep. Yeah. You can go to any store in the country. You can go to gas stations now. It's pretty famous.
No, but I mean, you can get it on the Kindle. You can get it
it's
Amazon, whatever.
Yeah. You can get it on paperback, Kindle, audiobook is now live.
Did you read it?
God, no. Yeah. Everyone can relax. I'm not the one reading it. This
should have had me do it.
Shit, dude. Maybe I should have. Do you do that?
No, I never have, but I don't see why I couldn't. Anybody out there want me to read your book?
Yeah, we were supposed to be plugging my book, but now here you're getting jobs.
A whole new gig.
Yeah, no, it's available.
Whatever happened to the Enormocast guy? Have you heard the new 50 Shades of, what is it? What's the sexy one? 50 Shades of Grey.
Don't act like you
have
don't
you heard
fucking
that?
know, Chris.
Have you heard that new reading? It's amazing.
Yeah, I can feel his blue jeans from here.
Anyhow, so more about your book. What was it called again? No, just kidding.
But yeah, my website, dakotawalz.com. That's where you can buy the paperback, Kindle, or audiobook. It's all there.
W-A-L-Z, not
Yep, W-A-L-Z.
Walls.
Yeah. Spelled like it's some kind of like hip app or something.
Right.
I have about 680 books sitting in my bedroom right now, so
we'll sell those. Won't we, people?
Those, yeah.
We can move at 680 books, can't we?
Yeah, the wife would be pretty psyched.
I mean,
if she
what's
had more room in the house.
On the Kindle, we can't sell the Kindle ones. I mean, it's a quick little read. It's not like a heavy thing that's going to weigh you down.
I tell people that, nobody reads books. And I shouldn't say nobody, but people don't read books, right? So I made it for people who can sit down and be like, oh fuck, I can do this in an hour or so. Yeah. It's a collection of short stories. So if you get bored, you just close the book and it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, totally. No, when I was reading it, I did read it on the Kindle. Now I have one in my hand, but I was like doing the Kindle. It's a percentage. Like I was reading for a little while and I looked down at the percentage. I'm like, oh shit, I'm like 46% through the book already. So, yeah. Because I hadn't looked at how long it was.
And I tell people that I designed it that way because I know people don't have an attention span, but really. The truth is I just didn't have that much important stuff to say.
Well, I would assume there'll be another volume that'll come out of you. I'm sure you still keep a journal.
Oh yeah.
So,
hopefully,
but check it out. It's a cool book, well illustrated, and I think it makes it's got some thoughtful stuff that affects all of us obsessive climbers in terms of, again, maybe a little bit about examining the dark side of that obsession, which has come up on the Enormocast a number of times. So
yeah, well, there's probably reason for that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for coming to Carbondale.
Yeah,
Dakota.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, bro.
I'm glad we get another one done.
Yeah, hell yeah. Hopefully this one will get published.
Yeah, let's see. I'll just forget about it.
Yeah.
Then you'll have that to think about while you're falling asleep. God, why didn't you put my second one out? I thought we did a pretty good job.
Dick, dude.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Dakota for round 2 on the Enormocast. Sorry, Corbin. Sorry about that. Yeah, I went and kind of spot listened to the old interview, and it's not bad. I don't think I trashed it. I think I just kind of forgot about it or It like disappeared into the ether, but it's not as good as what we just got done. So, you know, they were young, and the Shred All Fear thing, which again, I've linked it with this post. Go and check out the old Shred All Fear stuff, but it just wasn't enough to carry a whole episode. So it did sort of peter out. But I think we got something good done here. So it all's well that ends well, as our boy Bill Shakespeare said. I would love for you guys to check out DakotaWalz.com. That's Dakota Walz, WALZ.com, to find Dakota's book. You can go to Amazon. You can get it on Kindle, but, you know, everybody appreciates it when you actually send a note and get one right from the author. You know, I tell these people, come on the show. We'll sell some books. The fans of the Enormocast support this kind of thing, so don't let me down. I mean, you support me, and my art is just drinking whiskey and braying into a microphone. So the guy that actually put some time into a book needs your support. All right. You know, it's wintertime here in North America. Some people are still trying to rock climb. Some are ice climbing. Some have gone somewhere that's just warm enough to do whatever you want. But one thing I've noticed, and this has actually literally happened to me, is that sometimes you can fuck up your knot with all these puffy coats on. You know, you can't see those tie-in points on your harness. Just recently, I put my knot not through the leg loops, right? Just on the waist belt, which isn't really like a tragedy waiting to happen, but, you know, could result in a difficult situation or a painful fall on just your waist belt like they used to wear in the good old days. You know, if your partner has to dig around in your puffies with their cold hands, just let them. Just let them tickle your midriff for a second so they can see that knot. I mean, you know, if you have that kind of relationship. But what I really mean to say is check your knots.
A lot of people have asked me why did I write that book or any book. All the stories I wrote were true because I believed in what I saw. I was traveling west one time at the junction of the state line of Colorado. It's arid western one, and the state line of poor Utah. I saw in the clouds huge and massed above the fiery golden desert of even fall, the great image of God with forefinger pointed straight at me. Through halos and rolls and gold folds that were like the existence of a gleaming spear in his right hand, which saith, "Come on, boy, go thou across the ground. Go moan for man. Go moan. Go groan. Go groan alone. Go roll your bones alone. Go thou and be little beneath my sight. Go thou and be minute as seed in the pod. Go thou, die hence. And of this world report you well and truly."